Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody.
For me, the new Celerity is better than the old Celerity in the later stages of the game. However, pre-level 6, pre-core items, the old Celerity is significantly better. So once you get boots, once you get Triforce, the new Celerity is double as effective as the old Celerity with your bear stance movement speed active. And in my opinion, those are the moments that matter the most on Udyr.
Got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yo guys, what's going on? Willie here, super excited to bring you today's video, which will be a comparison between the old Celerity and the new Celerity. If you guys don't know, the preseason patch hit a couple days ago, and with it there's an introduction of a whole new assortment of runes, one of which is the Celerity change. So today I'll be breaking down the rune, explaining the numbers behind it, explaining the strengths relative to the old Celerity, and giving you my opinion on whether or not the rune is worth taking. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on in. So first things first, what exactly was the change to Celerity? The old Celerity gave you 1.5% increased movement speed while also turning some of your bonus movement speed into either attack damage or magic damage depending on your champion. The new Celerity makes movement speed bonuses 8% more effective on you. So immediately my first reactions to this is Riot Games is trying to make this rune catered more towards specific champions rather than kind of just this fit-all rune that anybody in the game could take. The old Celerity would make it to where you could take the rune, you would get increased movement speed and increased damage. Seems pretty good, right? So this means mid laners would take the rune to dodge skill shots easier, supports would take it to roam faster, top laners would take it to walk back to lane faster because all they do is die and blame the jungler, and the jungler would just take it to clear faster and gank more. It was kind of this rune that anybody in the game could take. The new Celerity seems specifically catered towards champions like Udyr, Hecarim, Misfortune, Cassiopeia, Zillion even, champions that already don't have a gap closer that need a way to deal with getting kited. So in order to test this rune, I'm going to use one of League's oldest characters as well as one of my favorite characters, Udyr. Udyr should theoretically benefit directly from this rune as he has a built-in movement speed bonus in his kit, which is his bear stance. He also has his passive Monkey's Agility, which grants him 5 movement speed, stacking up to 3 times for a total of 15 movement speed. So what this means, and keep this in mind as I run these tests here, is Udyr gets 1.2 bonus movement speed from the new Celerity at all times because his passive is extremely easy to stack. Now, in order to test this, I'm basically going to simulate all 5 points into bear because as you guys know, when you level up bear stance, movement speed increases as well as the movement speed duration. So what I've got here is I've got my handy dandy notepad set up, if I can pull it up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to test 1 through 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to test all 5 points in a bear. I'm going to test what the old Celerity looks like versus the new Celerity, as well as the old Celerity versus the new Celerity, taking into consideration water walking. If you guys don't know, most junglers in the game take water walking because it grants you bonus movement speed in the river as well as bonus attack damage. This is really good for dragon fights, baron fights, and scuttle fights as well. So to give you guys an example of the simulation I'm going to be running here, so let's just test 1 point into bear stance live real quick. So with 1 point into bear stance, when I activate my bear stance, we get 6 movement speed from the new Celerity. Now let's look at the total movement speed we would get with bear stance, 419. What this means is the old Celerity would have given us 419 times 1.5%, which comes out to be 6.285 movement speed. So what this means is even with the bear stance active here, the old Celerity is still better than the new Celerity because the old Celerity would have given us movement speed even without bear stance being active, right? I can just show you that real quick. So without bear stance active, we have 361 movement speed, which comes out to be 361 times 0.015. We would have had 5 movement speed granted from the old Celerity, whereas the new Celerity only gives us 1 movement speed, 1.2 movement speed from Udyr's passive, right? So already the old Celerity is way better than the new Celerity. Once again, I think this will change as we get more points into bear as the game progresses. So that's what I'm going to be testing. I'll be number crunching for you, plugging all these numbers into the notepad, and when I get it filled out, I'll be back. All right, guys, I'm back with the test results here, and it's funny. I actually had to restart the game because my minions ended up blowing up the enemy nexus while I was running the numbers. But here are the test results. I'm basically going to give you the summary here. So in the early stages of the game, from levels 1 to 6, you generally don't put your second point into bear until level 6. So in the early stages of the game, when you only have 1 point into bear, there isn't that big a difference between the old celerity and the new celerity. You know, we're looking at literally 1 or 2 movement speed difference, and that's with water walking. Without water walking, there really isn't that much of a difference. It's kind of the same thing. Keep in mind that this test was run assuming that bear stance movement speed was active. I did not take into account the fact that you're not going to have bear stance active at all times or the movement speed active at all times. So, you know, objectively in the early stages of the game, the old celerity will be better because you'll have more movement speed because you're just going to get flat movement speed without bear stance having to be active. Now, once we scale into the later stages of the game, levels 9 and 11, when you put 4 or 5 points into bear stance, you know, at level 11, when your bear stance is maxed, there is a pretty considerable difference between the new celerity and the old celerity. You know, we're talking 4 movement speed without water walking, and when you're in the river with water walking active, we're looking at, you know, almost double the effectiveness of the old celerity. The old celerity would have given you 7.5 movement speed, and the new celerity would have given you 14 movement speed. Now, a few things to keep in consideration. Like I mentioned a second ago, we are assuming that bear stance is active when I'm running these simulations, so obviously the old celerity will still probably be favored over the new celerity because the old celerity is active at all times, whereas you have to activate the bear stance in order to get the new celerity bonuses here. Another thing to take into consideration is the fact that the old celerity also gave you damage on top of giving you movement speed. So that means the new celerity only gives you movement speed, whereas the old celerity would give you movement speed and damage. So already I think the old celerity is favored. Even with 5 points in bear stance, I think the old celerity is still better than the new celerity because it gives you damage. You know, even though there is a 4 movement speed difference while not in the river, that is considerable. But the old celerity would have also given you attack damage. So without items, without boots, the old celerity is still way better than the new celerity, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to start simulating things like boots. Let's say you have boots. Let's say you have Triforce. Let's say you get some Cloud Dragons in there. I'll probably test all 3 Cloud Dragons. So let's say you get 1 Cloud Dragon. Let's say you get 2 Cloud Dragons and 3 Cloud Dragons. I'm going to run basically the same exact test. And I'll be back in just a second, guys. All right, guys, I'm back with the second batch of test results here, and well, needless to say, the new celerity is looking a little bit more promising. So the first thing I tested was tier 1 boots. I assumed you had 2 points in a bear because generally speaking, when you buy brown boots, you're generally before level 6. So, you know, with just brown boots, we're only looking at, 2 movement speed without water walking. And then with water walking, we're looking at, you know, about a 5 movement speed difference. That is actually pretty considerable. But once again, the old celerity will give you damage on top of the movement speed. So with brown boots, with the early stage of the game, I probably still prefer the old celerity to the new celerity. Now, once you upgrade to tier 2 boots, that's where we see the jump for the new celerity. Once you upgrade to, you know, Ninja Tabby or Merc Treads or whatever tier 2 boots you're looking for, you literally get double the effect of the old celerity. You know, we're literally looking at the new celerity gives about 15.4 movement speed with tier 2 boots without water walking. Mind you, this is without water walking. You literally get double the effect of the old celerity with your movement enhancing speed active, right? And for me, you know, even though the old celerity gives damage, I would much rather have double movement speed on Udyr than, you know, half movement speed and a little bit of extra damage, you know? For me, I would much rather take this. So I think when you upgrade to tier 2 boots, the new celerity is better than the old celerity. And then obviously when you're in the river, we're looking at a 10 movement speed difference. That's actually kind of nutty. When I say that out loud, like 10 movement speed is insane. When you stack that on top of Udyr's other abilities. So the next thing I tested was Triforce with tier 2 boots. If you guys don't know, you know, Triforce gives you 5% movement speed. So I tested that next, and, you know, with the Triforce, you know, we're still looking at a pretty significant jump. With Triforce, you get 2 extra movement speed whereas you only get 0.1 movement speed with the old celerity, and then, you know, within the river, we're looking at an extra movement speed here with only 0.1 difference here. So needless to say, once you get the tier 2 boots, once you get the Triforce, I think it's much, much better to have the new celerity relative to the old celerity. And then I tested Cloud Dragons. I do want to mention I did not test Phase Rush, and I did not test Deadmans with this test. You know, Deadmans and Phase Rush generally are kind of situational items and runes on Udyr, so I did not test those 2 items because you don't build those items every game. You don't take Phase Rush every game, so I did not test those in this simulation. But just keep in mind that you can take those items and runes with the new celerity. So moving on, the next thing I tested was Cloud Dragons, and as you can see, you know, if you get 1 Cloud Dragon, it's just nutty, man. Like, you're literally looking at double the difference between old celerity and new celerity, and then it's triple the difference between old celerity and new celerity with just 1 Cloud Dragon. Now, I did find it interesting here when I was testing this. As I added more Cloud Dragons, you know, it's only 1 extra movement speed, so maybe extra Cloud Dragons are not that important. Maybe it's just like the initial Cloud Dragon that's like super, super important, but I don't know. I still like that triple Cloud Dragon. So as you can see, when you get that triple Cloud Dragon Dream, it's literally triple the amount of movement speed of the old celerity in the river, and then even outside of the river, it's still pretty close to triple, just under triple, like 2.7% better than the old celerity. And then for shits and giggles, I tested 3 Cloud Dragons with Triforce, Deadmans, and boots, and you can see the results here. Look how fast we move. Like, just imagine, you know, you're like going for the Infernal Dragon. Like, how are enemy teams supposed to land skill shots on this? Like, it's actually insane how fast you move. Like, legit, you can juke people so hard with this. And then, you know, I went ahead and took Phase Rush this game. Like, when you have Phase Rush in the river too, for those Phase Rush Udyr out there, like, you're actually just zooming, boys. Like, look how fucking fast you are in the river. So I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but needless to say, the final verdict for me on the celerity is I will still be taking this rune on Udyr, because once you get boots, once you get Triforce, the new celerity is double as effective as the old celerity with your bear stance movement speed active. And in my opinion, those are the moments that matter the most on Udyr. You know, whether it's running up to stun somebody or running to get away from somebody, you know, those are the moments that are the most important on Udyr, and the new celerity plays better into those situations than the old celerity. So for me, the new celerity is better than the old celerity in the later stages of the game. However, pre-level 6, pre-core items, the old celerity is significantly better. So that's my final verdict, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one, and please like, comment, and subscribe. Catch you later, boys.
Check my bankroll, AO 400K for vehicle. Paint job look like ashy ankles on Django. Interior look mango. Shotgun grape, he look like mayo. Golden voice on payroll. Neck all gold like KO Corp. We aim at doors, get out the way, yo.